I made this artwork completely without a pen tablet, and I'll show you how you can do it too. Right after I thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're an artist watching this video, I really suggest making your own website to showcase your artwork. Squarespace has made it super easy with their new feature, Squarespace Blueprint. This quickens up the whole process of having to create a website, so it's fast, easy, and looks really good. And is sure to make you discovered super fast with their optimized SEO tools. Selling your art? Well, you can sell directly from your Squarespace website. Whether it's physical art or digital, selling your products has never been easier. Don't want to handle all that shipping yourself? Squarespace allows custom merch to be sold where you don't have to handle any of the production and shipping. Just put your art up on a piece of product of your choice, list them on the Squarespace site, and then start selling. The rest is handled for you. So get started. Head over to squarespace.com for your free trial, have fun creating your very own website, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/SammyJen to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So I know that you can draw on smartphone these days, whether it be with your finger or a phone that has like a stylus like a lot of Android phones does. But I do want to share some old school ways I did digital art back in the day on like a PC, laptop, and whatever I had lying around. Let me just be an old man that yell at clouds because you kids these days get access to pen tablets so easily. It's a big market, they're so affordable. Back in my day, everyone wanted a Wacom, but they're so expensive, and all I could afford was this like Genius tablet, which was my very first tablet. I'll talk about later. It's like actually supposed to be used for like businessmen's signatures or something like that. So the point of this video is to show you that if you really can't afford a tablet and you don't want to draw on a phone, this is what you can do in the meantime, okay? So before I get into that, I do want to mention that there's more types of digital arts than like, you know, the typical artwork that you always see, like 3D art. Blender is free. There's tons of tutorials on YouTube. You don't need a pen tablet for that. Just a mouse is fine. Learn how to model stuff. What else? Pixel art. All you need is like MS Paint, zoom the hell in, and then like just dot each square. Like pixel art is literally just arranging little pixels around on the canvas. It's kind of niche, but also like a big market for that, especially in like video games. There's also vector art. Just arrange a bunch of anchors around, mostly used in Adobe Illustrator, but if you can't afford that, I think there's Affinity. Try giving that a go because if you're good at vector art, you can also do graphic design. Or you know what, if you really can't afford all of the digital products like the software art programs, laptop, PC, or an iPad or tablet and stuff like that, you can always just go with traditional art, all right? So again, YouTube has a lot of tutorials for these. You should try out everything. Don't just be like, oh, I can't afford something and then give up. But yeah, let's get into digital art with no pen tablet. This is going to be a mix with traditional art, okay? So basically, all of the drawing will be done on paper and then the coloring will be done digitally. Let's be real, we're not gonna be drawing with a mouse. That's straight up uncomfortable and like just unrealistic, okay? We're not gonna do that. So what you're gonna need is plain paper, sketchbook, anything. I'm just using plain A4 paper. Pencils, I'm using coloring pencils. An ink pen, this is optional though. And a PC or a laptop, and an art program of your choice. I'm using a MacBook Pro and will mainly be using Clip Studio Paint, but I'll try to mention some other apps as well. There's a bunch of free art apps out there like Metabang, Ibis Paint, Krita, Alpaca Fire. But back then I used the good old Photoshop CS2 when they used to be a lifetime license and not whatever the hell that they are today. So you can use a regular 2B pencil or any pencil lying around for the sketch. But I'm gonna be using coloring pencils and I'll be lining with a Sakura pen. So the sketch will be a different color and the lines will be black. So some art programs you can pull just the black from an image. That's why I need this to be in a different color. But if you wanna do the line art completely digitally, you can just skip this out, you don't need it. And use the chapters function or check the timestamps in the description. There'll be a part where you can do the line art in art programs instead with a mouse, of course. I'm just gonna come up with some ideas first. Is the paper see-through enough? Kind of is. Could have used this as layers. I'll just use one piece of paper then. We're doing it single layered. Okay, so that's my first layer. Then I'm gonna make it clear with another color. Okay, I think I'm done. This looks a little weird, but I think I'll edit it digitally after this. The eyes are a little too far apart. The mouth looks weird. Once this is done, you can either immediately put this into your art program and then start the process digitally from there. Or if you saw the line art process in this video and you think it's a little too advanced for you, a little too difficult, you can just go in and line art traditionally with a pen. But let's say you're happy with the sketch and you're ready to do this digitally. So ideally, use a scanner to scan this, but I know most of you won't have a scanner. Using your phone to take a picture is perfectly fine. Just make sure you're taking a picture in a well-lit area. So I have a scanner, but I know a lot of people don't have scanners. Just to be fair, I'm going to take a picture with this, okay? I changed my mind. I'm not going to be using my MacBook anymore. I'm just going to use my gaming PC instead, because Mac doesn't really like it when you use other mouses that aren't Apple's. Like, who the hell can afford that? Just going to be using this. Hell yeah. So doing line art digitally, you have a lot of options of art programs that you can use. One that I'm going to mention is Krita. I've never used Krita before, but looking at all their settings and everything, all of their tools, they have so much, and it is 100% free. So here I have a photo of my sketch. We're going to be lining this. First step is just to make the photo a lot brighter. Use levels or brightness contrast. Every art program has it. And just change this one right here, the one on the right, just so that it's not so dark. Make sure you have another layer on the bottom. Go with gray. Don't use white, because once you lower the opacity of your photo, the background is white, and I don't recommend doing any art with white background. It'll hurt your eyes, so use gray instead. So Krita and Clip Studio Paint has vector layers, and this is what we're going to be using to make our line art. Just add a vector layer. You have a pen tool that you can just start going. Close path, and also in tool options, you can change the vector itself. You can change its width and change a few more settings just so that it looks more nicer. And just do this with the entire artwork. Let's go to Photoshop. This is what I used back then. Hit OK, lower the opacity, just so that I can barely see it, and make a new layer. Photoshop does not have vector layers, only regular raster layers. But what they have is a pretty good pen tool. It's very smooth, very easy to use. And when you want to put down your brush strokes, you just go to your brush, make sure the settings are nice. Yeah, it's a good size. Go to Shape Dynamics, make sure pen pressure is on. Go back to your pen tool, right click, stroke path, and then make sure Simulate Pressure is on. This is brush, hit OK, and there it is. You don't have to right click and do that every time though. You can just keep going, putting down your anchor lines, and then just go to your brush, hit enter. Look at that, very nice. To take out the pen lines, go back to your pen tool, hit enter, and it's gone. It's very easy to use, but the downside is you can't change the brushes or anything. It's not vector, you can't change anything at all. Once the brush is laid down, it's there, it's raster. Same with Clip Studio Paint. A background layer, you can just use a paper layer. Go to layer, new layer, and then paper, set to gray. Lower this opacity, new vector layer. You use the figure tool, it's right here. It's in the direct draw. And here's a bunch that you can use. But the thing with Clip Studio Paint is that you can edit the vectors and edit their lines. You can edit the width, the starting point, and the end. So if you hold control, you can see the anchor points and then change them around. Right down here, there is the correct line tool. There's also a tool to adjust the line width by thickening just where you want. And this gives it a really nice weight. But as you can see, this tool doesn't work very well. It's kind of weird. If you want to end in a sharp point, you would have to click it again. I'm not clicking and dragging, and just click once, move the mouse around, and this feels very unnatural if you've done vector before. I'd say Krita does it actually a lot better. Clip Studio Paint also has options to change the brushes that you're using on vector layers. Just make sure that your brush that you want is registered as a preset. So I really like the Rail G pen. You can see it's very nice and textured. Go to Subtool Detail, go to Brush Shape, add to presets. Done. Now go to Object, and in Brush Shape, change to Rail G pen. You can see this one over here has changed. If I want to change just one, hold control, select the one you want to change, and then go to brush shape, change it. Easy. I'm gonna go through the process of lining this thing. It's just like a lot of clicking and then a lot of holding control to move each anchor around. It just takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit weird. Here I've changed the thickness on some parts, like the highest parts of curves to be thicker and points where it ends to be thinner. And as for the coloring process, it's pretty much the same with when I'm using a tablet, because I'm just using the paint bucket tool, press. For shading as well, also the paint bucket tool. But for tiny details, I use the lasso, specifically the polygon lasso. So the process is the same as doing the line art. Just a lot of clicking, doing all the selection, filling it in. And because it's quite sharp, because it's a polygon tool, there's no curves in it, just use a liquify tool to stretch some parts out. Change the line art color, liquify it a bit. And for the background, I use Clip Studio's default backgrounds. This came with the art program. It's for free. I just drag and dropped in there, so I didn't have to draw anything. It's perfectly fine to use. downloaded some petal brushes and added some highlights. And also there's a brush for hair highlights. This is really cool. I'll put a link in the description for you to use. And then the rest is just a bunch of color correction. If you'd like to see my full process, there's a link in the top right corner for my full process in Clip Studio Paint. Even if you're not using Clip Studio, you can also follow this process in other art programs. It's pretty basic, just using, Paint Bucket, selection tools, just how I color and just my step-by-step process on how I do my usual artwork. So anyone can follow along. There's also links in the description. Also, to add some texture, just so it doesn't feel so stiff, I found this brush. Links down below, just to give it more texture. And here is the final look. I think this is pretty okay, considering doing all of this with a mouse. So alternatively, if you don't want to ink digitally, you can do the line art traditionally with a pen. Actually, any pen will do, just make sure it's black. I prefer this brand because this is the brand I used back in the day. This is a Sakura Pigma Micron pen. The size is 0.5. I would prefer a 1, but this is all they had. So yeah, just trace over the sketch, make sure it's nice and clean. But if I make a mistake, I have whiteout just in case. Man, I should have gotten a bigger pen because this is too small for me. Doing fast strokes would just end up in the stroke being kind of torn, like there's not enough ink in it, so I'd have to retrace it again. And this just made my lines really wobbly. I know this is super messy, but I will try to clean this up digitally later. But I think I did a pretty good job for someone who hasn't touched a pen in years. It's done, either scan this or go to a clearly lit area and take a photo. For this one is if you've already done the line art traditionally. You don't have to do the hard part of lining digitally if you don't like it. You can just do it traditionally like this. It's a bit messy, but we can fix this up. In Photoshop, you can just go to select, color range, change this to shadows, adjust the fuzziness and range so that you only select the dark parts, which is the black ink here. Change the selection so you can see it better. And let's see the range. Yep, let's keep going down so it's not selecting the other parts like the grays, blues, and yellows of the pencil colors, just the dark parts. There's still some right there on the mouth though. And hit OK. Now that I've selected only the black parts, you have to invert it. Go to select, inverse, and then hit delete. And choose white. Deselect, and here you have it, just the line art. There's still some imperfections, so just go in and then use a white brush to clean up. Or you can just keep going in the color range again, and you can see that it's taking out a bit more of that messiness. Inverse, delete. Yep, and it's a lot cleaner now. Or if you're using some other art program, I'm sure that there's a tool for something like this. I'm not proficient with Krita, but let's say you're using something like Ibis or something, and it doesn't have any like special tools like that, like in Photoshop. Go to Hue, Saturation, Lightness, or use any filter to change this into black and white. Hit OK, and then go to Curves. Now when you're adjusting curves, there's red, green, blue, same with every other art program, but just go to the first one, which is always default to RGB. Make some anchor points and then keep adjusting. The top one is to adjust the brightness, so you keep adjusting the brightness up. This is for the grays, so that's the pencil lines. Keep going up. And for the bottom one right here is for the darkness, which is the black ink, so pull it down to make it darker. You can add a few more anchors, because there's different levels of gray there. Make the brightness more brighter. And hit OK. There, you only have your lines. Easy peasy. But still, imperfections. You might have to go in and fix this again. Now for Clip Studio Paint, this is my art program of choice. They also have something similar to Photoshop, which is go to select color gamut, and then zoom in and select like the darkest color right there, and it's selected. But it's really hard to see. The preview isn't that great. You can adjust the threshold and stuff, but it's a lot of trial and error, having to go in and then make adjustments again. Let's try this one out. Okay, so darkest parts. It's not selecting those up there, I can see. So that means I would have to push the threshold up, reset, hit it again. Okay, now it's selected. Now invert that and hit delete. There's only line art left on the canvas. I need a paper layer. Paper, set to white, and let's go in and check again. It looks okay, but Clip Studio has a cleanup function. Let's see if you have a little bit of debris, like let's say right there. You go to filter, correction, and then remove dust. And see, it'll remove any specks like that. You can adjust the threshold as well. The more I go, the more it deletes. You see the earring will disappear. Also the nose. But I just need a few of the dust gone. Hit OK, and it should be a lot cleaner now. And still have to manually do a little bit of cleanup just with an eraser and just slowly clicking some parts. But yeah, going through the exact same process of coloring, I'm gonna try using a different color this time. The rest of the process is the same. Paint bucket for filling, and for shading I use the curve tool, which I use to line digitally, but for this one you can change it to a shape tool, which just automatically fills. So filling in shadows is a lot easier this way. Did the shading, Added a pattern to the scarf, which comes with Clip Studio. Use a lot of liquefying, and then the background is also just from Clip Studio. Just slap that on, did some overlay colors, just using a lot of brushes, color correction, and then it's done. Finally, complete. Look at it. I'd say not bad for like only using a mouse. So this is something that you can do in the meantime while you save up for a tablet. Try it out, have fun with it. Let me know if this helps. If you need any help, just feel free to comment. Bye-bye.